Alright, in this video we're going to go over how to access items in lists if you have lists within lists. So this can get a little confusing, but it's actually pretty simple as far as the syntax goes. It's just a matter of kind of keeping your list straight. So to access these items, the syntax is going to be calling whatever list you have, just like we would normally, right? Like if we had a list named list and we wanted, let's say, like the third item from it, right, we would put list 2, remembering that the index is one lower than the number of the actual item that you're accessing, right? So we could do this. So the syntax for accessing items with lists within lists is going to be pretty similar, except there's just going to be multiple little arguments in brackets here, right? So it'll be name of the list, and then the outer list comes first, and then the inner list. So if you have a list within a list, you would access the list number within the outer list, and then the item within that given list that you just picked. I know this is kind of confusing. We'll see an example in a sec. If you have multiple lists, more than one nested list within another list, then the same thing applies. You would have as many little bracket parameters in here as you would need, right? We would do the outer list, and then the next outer list, and then the next outer list, and then the inner list, working our way kind of from outside to inside as we go through those lists. All right. So if we look at an example here, we can make a list called list, again, not using the actual word list because that's a reserved word. And we can make, let's start simple here and do two lists. Let's say we have a list 1 and 2, and then a list 3 and 4. So we have two lists that make up this bigger list here. So if we wanted to access items in the list, we could do a print statement here to show this. We could print list, and then we could do item, let's say 0, 1. And then if we print this, maybe pause the video for a second, try and predict what you think the output of this will be. We should know our list indices by now, right? So if we do list 0 and then 1, that's going to pick the 0 index item from the outer list, and then pick the 1 index item from the inner list, right? So if we look at the 0 index outer list, right, that would be this list 1, 2, and then if we look at the 1 index within that list, that would be index, or that would be item 2 here, or the second item, also number 2, right? So if we go ahead and execute this, right, we'll see that it accesses 2, right? And we could change this a little bit. Maybe if we switch it up and do 1, 1 for the two indices there, right, we would have list index 1 of the outer list. That would be this second larger list here, and then index 1 of that would be 4, right? So we could execute that, and we have 4 as well. So just for kicks, we can try and do a little more involved example here. So if we were to make more lists here, let's say we can make a new list 5, 6, and then 7, 8. Now we've closed all of these lists, so now we have a bunch of nested lists here, right? We have the larger list that is referred to as this list variable, and then we have two kind of big lists that make that up, and then each of those two larger lists is made up of two smaller lists, right? So again, we're going to access these in the same way, just now we're going to have 3 parameters, right? So if we go for list 1, 1, and 1, right, this would give us index 1 in the bigger list, so we're looking at this outer list here, and then we could go for index 1 within that, which would give us this second list here, 7 and 8, and then we could go for index 1 of that, which would give us the number 8. So if we run this, we'll get 8. You can play around with this yourself and see kind of how this works, but basically the key is we're just working our way from outside to inside. So this may not have been a great example to demonstrate that, since we did 1 for all of these. We have short lists, so we don't have a ton of options here. We could do 1, 0, 1 and print this. Maybe pause the video and see what you think the output of this will be. So again, we're going to access list index 1 of the outermost list, so that would be this whole list with 5, 6, 7, 8. And then the 0 index of that, which would be the first list, so 5, 6, and then the 1 index of that list, which would be 6. So if we run this, we'll get the integer 6. All right, this can be a little confusing, but basically the key with this is just to work your way from outside to inside as you go from left to right, in this list index that you're accessing, right? So that's the big key, is work your way from the outermost list in one by one to the innermost list. Realistically, you're probably not going to have many programs, for our purposes especially, that you're going to have 3 or 4 lists containing other lists containing other lists. But it is definitely very useful to have maybe a list within a list, and then you can obviously use this with only 2 parameters and access it that way. So this is just a neat little trick that might come in handy for you here and there. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.